Right, then let's talk about Scott McTominay. McTominay is a player that has genuinely split the fan base this season. He is a player that has came in and been our saviour in games, scoring very, very important, crucial goals. He's actually the club's top scorer at the moment. But does he do enough? And does he warrant a place in the starting lineup on the back of scoring, half a dozen goals? Let's look into it. So in this season so far, there is more to Scott McTominay than the goals he scored this season. He has scored the most, but has he contributed effectively to the team? We have seen more than enough of Scott. He has scored 6, assisted 1 in 19 games played. And those are incredible numbers for what many people consider a defensive midfielder. I would call him a more box-to-box midfielder. And he looks more of a threat in goal than any of our forwards do currently. And he's a key player for us. And he's featured a lot. A total of 1,349 minutes in the Premier League and Champions League this season. He is in the 99th percentile for midfielders for non-penalty goals and non-penalty XG. So there's obviously something going right there. He's got an average total shot of 2.2 per 90, which puts him in the 96th percentile. And his defensive effort isn't terrible. His clearances put him in the top bracket of midfielders with 2.06 per 90, putting him in the 92nd percentile. He has literally won points alone for us this season, but I don't think that tells the full story. And it feels like to me right now that with McTominay as our main kind of goal-scoring outlet, he is one of the safest bets, one, to be in the team, but also to be on the team sheet. And his goals, in my opinion, are a product of fortune. There isn't a set goal that you've seen him score. There isn't a set pattern of play. You couldn't say, we will work it into this area to do this. There isn't a Scott McTominay goal. Each goal seems to come out of nowhere, out of different scenarios. And he's supposed to be playing as a midfielder. A lot of people would call it a number 8. I think the way United are trying to line up at the moment, it's effectively a number 6. But his positional discipline, which I think is poor, sees him drifting into areas that a number 8 isn't meant to occupy. And coupled with Bruno, who is a very high 10, almost at times a second striker, it's left the midfield vacated. And if you're watching Manchester United games this season, you go, Jesus Christ, this looks like a basketball game. It's just end to end to end to end. It's just transition city. This, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why we're seeing that. And I think criticism that has been aimed at McTominay scrutinises his shuttling, which is fair, his ball-playing ability, which is fair, and his composure in that midfield, and I think that's all fair. But his finishing has been lethal at times. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that is not why he is a Manchester United player. He's not there as a finisher. And for all the people like, he played as a forward in the academy. He played in a forward in the academy because Jose Mourinho wouldn't sanction a £250,000 signing of a striker just so we could have some structure to the way the under-23s played. So they played McTominay out of position. They also tried Matty Willock out of there. Both of them were number 8s. He's not a striker. Now, there are still some questions that require answering, and there's a lot of questions that I think need answering. And the longer time goes by, I think the more clear those answers will become. The first things that we have asked, and can he improve his ball playing? And evidence seems to suggest no. Not at the age that he's at the moment, and not with the areas that he's seemingly occupying on the pitch. The second question that I think a lot of people need to ask is, does McTominay have all the tools to start consistently for Manchester United? And I think the evidence suggests no. And another question that you can ask is, can we excuse the lack of positional discipline in exchange for the goals? For a manager that has seemingly an entire play style that is fueled by control and consistency, I am confused as to how McTominay can be a consistent starter for Erik ten Hag. Now, at the weekend, we did see Mainu and Amrabat line up together, but I think that was a happenstance of the situation rather than anything pre-planned. It's been something I've been asking for weeks, but I think Scott's goal threat has been something that Ten Hag has required to have in the team, and that's why you're seeing him in there. So it's going to be very interesting to see does McTominay start? I mean, the midfield competition, let's just have it right, there hasn't been any. You know, he at times has been like one of the only people available to select in midfield. Now, once everybody's fit, you've got plenty of options. I would expect Casemiro, Eriksen, Mount, even Mainu and Amrabat, once they're fully fit, to offer more or closer to the fuller package than I think you see from Scott. The goals are there, but the performances aren't there. And actually, if you look at a couple of games in isolation, against Bournemouth, Rasmus Højlund had one shot on goal. One, right? It's not enough from a striker, right? Scott McTominay had 7. Now, wouldn't a midfielder want to maybe create a chance for somebody else? Wouldn't the midfielder maybe pass it on to the striking specialist? How is Scott McTominay taking 7 times the number of shots that Rasmus Højlund has? And over the course of the season, right now in the Premier League, I think it's 26 for Scott McTominay and only 18 for Rasmus Højlund. You go, why does this team look so dysfunctional? The evidence is right there in front of you. Now, it's not clear yet, I don't think, how highly Ten Hag rates McTominay compared to the other midfield colleagues. Giving him the armband at Anfield at weekend was interesting when he had the supposed club vice-captain Varane starting at the same time as well. And this is a player that they definitely tried to sell in the summer but didn't quite get the correct valuation for. So right now he's being picked week in, week out. Amrabat hasn't put in a performance where you go, oh my God, he's got to start next week. So does that mean maybe it'll be McTominay and Mainu? Are we going to then sacrifice Mainu's ability to play because we're going to be asking some 18-year-old kid with 3 starts to his name to cover such a vast expanse of an area of the pitch because Scott McTominay has left him all alone? West Ham are in great form at the moment. If you do that against West Ham this weekend, you're going to see Kudus and Bowen absolutely dunking all over you. And there's no way that Ten Hag looks at McTominay like he's found his man. He doesn't have the qualities that we need in a number 8. He can't progress the ball from defence into attack. That's not what he does. The comparisons with him being an evolution of Fellaini are accurate. He's chaos in the box. Unfortunately, that means chaos in our box in a negative sense, but positively chaos in the opposition box. I think coming off the bench, McTominay could play a role. I think he's been vital in doing that. The Brentford game, 2 injury time goals, helps win it 2-1. I think that's a great utilisation of him. I think allowing him to fill in when you have an injury crisis is one thing. I mean, this has been like a 3-4 month injury crisis, so that might be a bit too much. But coming in and giving somebody the night off, I don't think anyone would have a problem with Scott McTominay doing that. There are some flashes of real quality, especially in the opposition box. But I don't know how you fit him, Bruno, Mount, Casemiro, all into the same team. The mentality just isn't there for anybody to think, worst case scenario, what happens if we lose the ball here? No one gets behind the ball. All of those players want to be in front of the ball. And you can't play like that. The control that Erik Ten Hag wants to exhibit in games doesn't exist when you're picking those players. So I think there are many routes that we could see the manager take with Scott McTominay, and he could, and I definitely think should, keep him as a valuable member of the squad. In terms of character, I think there's a reason he got given the armband away at Anfield. And I think that there's a few things that you can criticise Scott for, and I do. But I also don't think that you can question his character or his commitment to Manchester United wanting to see them win games. I think he always says the right thing. I think he takes a lot of ownership. I don't see him blaming others about when things go wrong. I see him taking a lot on the chin, and I see him saying things that I would say as a fan, and I can get behind that. I just don't want to see him starting 30, 40 games for Manchester United every season. West Ham offered somewhere in the region of 30 million for him after a relatively poor season. I think if someone came in with that sort of money in January, and you can correctly identify someone to move him on, that might be a good option. But I also wouldn't be mad at him sticking around because he has shown he's got his uses. I just don't want to see him playing 90s regardless of the situation, because I think that there's a higher quality of football to be played if McTominay's role is diminished and limited to cameos or coming off the bench when you need a bit of chaos. Because sometimes you need a bit of chaos. Like United's bench at the moment, you're looking there, you're going, who can change this game for us? Palestri. Wow. Whereas Scott McTominay has proven he's got the ability to go and absolutely cause chaos. If you're starting each game with a 4-2-3-1 shape, your sitting sixes have done their job throughout the game. Maybe it's got to the 75th minute and you're like, right, okay, we're at 0-0, 1-1. This game's in a bit of a deadlock. What are we going to do? Sir Alex Ferguson, I guarantee you at that time, would bring on someone that would be a force multiplier, someone that would be a little bit of a gamble, a little bit of a risk. We're not settling for a point. We're going to go and push and try and win all three. That's the time to introduce Scott McTominay. It was the same with Fellaini. There was no issue with Fellaini being a part of the squad to come on and do those things. The problem is when he's starting week in, week out, the quality of the football that you're trying to play diminishes. That's my thoughts on Scott McTominay. Please let me know yours in the comments below. See you in the next one. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.